Hello again, welcome back everybody. This is Feature Bootcamp, the first session of our Feature Bootcamp where we are going to be writing a brand new draft of a feature script in 8 weeks. We're going to start with talking about logline to outline today, so figuring out how to go from that logline, or that really simple expression of the idea, into the first steps of structuring the idea, or structuring the rest of the plot, and then we're going to work on pitching, or look at some of those pitches from contained genre movies from last week. Horror, thriller, and action in constrained environments. So we're on a stage channel, which means you do have to raise your hand if you want to speak. It's that little hand icon at the bottom of your Discord window. You then have to, once you're invited to the stage, you do have to click the accept button in order to move from the audience to the stage. We are part of Script Camp, which is one of many servers in our Skill Camp family. We're a nonprofit that offers free and low-cost classes to reach new skills and attain your life goals. We've got plenty of other servers that you can see here, including WordCamp, where we have weekly novel classes, writing groups, and meetups on Saturdays from 12 to 2. We have Novel Bootcamp that's running on that server and will be until September 21st. We have Game Camp, which is our newest one, centered on game design, and we also stream gaming over there, which is fun. We have Film Camp for filmmaking, Toon Camp for animation, and lots more that you can see, including upcoming classes on Code Camp, which is designed for coding classes as well. So we have some classes that are free for everybody, like the one you're in right now. This is free and public, and we have some that are going to be for our supporting members. So if you'd like to persist past the free weeks of any program, you can sign up at our website, which is scriptcamp.net. You can sign up for unlimited membership, which includes access to everything that we do on every server, even though the website is called Script Camp. This will include access to every class on all the Skill Camp servers like Word, Film, Code, Toon, Creator, and all these, with over 100 hours of classes and events per month, video library access with recordings of all the previous events, huge discounts off consultations and proofreads. You also get script coins, which you can be using to purchase table reads or other little benefits like that. Okay, so that's the basics. Sign up for Script Camp if you haven't yet done so, and if you want to stick around for the full extent of any of these programs. We have a poll in the chat that you can let us know by clicking on these little numbers if you attended last week and if you have questions or if you are ready to present your story this week. It doesn't have to be perfect, so don't worry about it having, you're not pitching to a buyer, you're not pitching to anybody who has any power to make the movie, so it doesn't have to be great. You're trying to just learn those fundamentals and get some of these basic pointers and tips. As for me, I've been writing full-length scripts for about 12, 13 years. Moved to LA in 2015 and got signed and repped for the first time in 2017, my first manager, and have set up a bunch of horror and thriller type scripts and done rewrites on horror thriller scripts mostly. Working on mostly developing action movies right now with UK-based production companies, and have done a lot of polishes and rewrites and things like this. I teach the boot camps in the Weekly Writers Lab and also the Novel Bootcamp, which is Saturdays. Here's just some of the upcoming classes in boot camp, so you can take a look at this. These are all for programs that have already started. So we're past the free initial weeks on these, except for obviously this one right now is a free public class. But as we continue, remember you should sign up for membership if you want to continue to take more of these. Okay, let's continue. So you can sign up, scriptcamp.net. We usually have a poll in the chat as well, where you can click those little blue numbers to indicate if you're interested in signing up or if you have other questions. So last week was concepts that sell in 2024, which we were really focusing on contained horror, thriller, and action, which considering the kind of state of the, let me tilt this down, hello, which considering the state of the industry that we're in right now, you have to kind of be setting yourself up for success and making sure that you are stacking the deck in your favor as much as you can. So just breaking in, these are kind of like the lower barrier of entry. Horror thriller doesn't need a big star. The limitations of the contained genre movie kind of add to the appeal of these movies in their own kind of way, which is just great. And so it is to your benefit if you're trying to break in to pick the genres and things that, first of all, you're most passionate about and most excited about and you like the most. But also just thinking practically, these are the things that are most likely to get made or sell in the current climate and year. So that's why we focused on those last week and why we'll be hearing pitches for those things today. Today we're going to also be looking at finalizing Logline and filling out the sketchbook, which is going to be that kind of unsorted, unformatted document that's including all of the early brainstorming and pre-writing work for your script before you get to the story beat stage. And even as you continue to work out your story beats and scene cards and more advanced pre-writing documents like this, you can be doing that in the sketchbook. So why don't we just go ahead and make that now if you haven't already done that. Let's just skip ahead a bunch of slides. If you haven't already done this, go to Google Docs, and you're going to make a new document, just a blank document, and you're going to call it name of your movie and sketchbook. Or if you haven't settled on a movie idea yet, then you're going to go with movie sketchbook. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. And at the top, you just want to include a couple things. If you have multiple ideas you're juggling, you're going to want to copy and paste this field or these fields a couple different times, of course. We are trying to fill out these basic questions until you have the logline ready. So that's going to be title, genre, and comps. So title is obvious what that means, but it can change and iterate a lot as you go on. A really good high concept idea is usually going to have a couple pretty clear titles that could apply to it. It's like a title is sort of like the icing on the cake or the bow that you tie the present together with. It's like kind of the last piece of a really clear high concept package. And if you have a really clear high concept story, you usually need a title that kind of emphasizes and amplifies the hook and brings that hook to the forefront and makes it really clear like what kind of movie this is, who this would appeal to. Like the title's like both unimportant and also important. They often change over the course of the writing process, or it gets out of your hands at a certain point. They can release the movie as whatever they want, but title is great because sometimes even thinking of a title using that kind of basic story math, you can almost create or engineer a story just based on that. Thinking, okay, what would that be? What kind of hook would a story would that title have? And then from there you can derive a logline, and from a logline you can derive an outline. And we approach this a lot. A lot of the time I suggest approaching this almost in this kind of, mathematical, architectural kind of way, or at least this is how I go about it. There's lots of ways of approaching this in lots of different styles. But I go about this using this kind of logic that I call story math almost, which is like when you have a logical logline that lays that solid concrete foundation for the rest of the story, and you can extrapolate information from that logline to already place a couple plot moments on the board, and then connect those dots by reverse engineering from the ending you get and like connecting adding that tissue to connect those plot points, adding in a couple extra great premise sequences as you go, so that by the time you get to the end, you have started from just a cool title or just that cool logline, and you have figured out the basics of the events of what is a pretty long story, like a pretty long document. 100 pages is like not easy to write a coherent, consistently interesting and escalating in stakes story of that length and like sustaining it for that long. Obviously, it doesn't take that long to watch, but it's a long document. It takes a long time to read, and it can take a long time to write. So obviously nowhere near as long as a novel or something like this. But with features, we're typically writing, we do these boot camps in 8 weeks because for a feature assignment, you're typically going to get between 8 and 12 weeks for your first draft. So I would practice trying to be able to write an entire feature. It doesn't have to be amazing, but like at least a vomit draft or whatever you want to call it in 8 to 12 weeks. Okay, what else do we need? Genre. So genre should be limited to just 2 things. Don't write a bunch of different genres, obviously, unless you're trying to decide what to write. But once you've settled on an idea, don't define it in terms of, it's a horror comedy musical western. Like those, kind of just boil it down to 2 things if you can. Figure out what it is primarily. If it has only one musical number in it, it's probably not a musical. If it just has some funny moments here and there, it doesn't necessarily have to be a comedy. Genre is not like all-encompassing. It's not saying every single thing that will be in that work. You're giving us sort of like the basic expectations and the primary subject matter that will be in that, and you're sort of helping us understand who this is for. And that's what comps are really useful for too. Comps are this meets that. So this movie meets that movie. You can think of it in terms of maybe like the world of the first thing and the style, the tone, or the approach of the second thing if you want. That's not a hard science. That won't always work, but I find that just to be a useful starting point if you don't know how else to draw your comps. So think of, I don't know, you want to do like a detective story that's set in space, right? So we pick our first one thing would be Star Trek, I guess. It's going to be set on spaceships with military command structure or naval command structure. Meets, Murder on the Orient Express. Okay, great. Murder mystery on a starship. Easy, right? So the world of the first thing, the style, tone, or approach of the second thing. Just a good starting point. You don't always have to do that. Okay, so we have title, genre, comps, and last we have your logline, which is going to be what we're finalizing today. If you can, moving forward, you're going to have to at least wrap it up this week, because the logline is your story central conflict distilled down to one single sentence. It's that answer to the question of what is it about? It's going to do a couple really key things, such as implying visual, interesting action. Like it's not going to be primarily a movie about people sitting around and thinking about stuff or discussing stuff. Very rarely will discussing stuff actually be dramatic, unless you're doing a courtroom style movie or like 12 Angry Men or something like that, in which the discussion itself actually has a clear, trackable sense of progress and really high stakes and things like that, right? Like, you can make discussion dramatic, but by default, discussion is undramatic or non-dramatic, right? So try to not make it seem like, unless your story is really, really, really intensely focused on that one setting and like on mining as much drama out of that one situation, or that one, people sitting around talking situation as possible, then you generally want to suggest that your movie is going to be about people going places and doing things. Obviously, if you're doing a contained story like we talked about last week, it's more often going to be about defending a space or escaping from a space or something like that. But we are centralized in that one spot for more. So it's not going to be as much about moving around, but it's still we should understand that it's going to be about people doing stuff or attempting to do stuff, putting interesting tactics into play in an effort to achieve their interesting goals in a more interesting way than we would in real life. Typically, stories aren't about people pursuing mundane goals in a mundane way. They're about people either pursuing extraordinary goals in an extraordinary way, or sometimes can be about, I don't know, maybe a procedural is kind of pursuing extraordinary goals in a mundane way, isn't it? That's like the day-to-day police work, that to them it's just clock in, clock out, it's a job. But ultimately they are doing extraordinary things. That might be like an example of doing the extraordinary in a mundane fashion. But in any case, movies are about people doing interesting stuff. There's a character, there's something in their way, and there's something that happens if they won't succeed. That should be pretty evident from the logline, but if not, you might have to spell it out. What happens if they fail? Does the Earth blow up? Will they just be sad? Will their child be kidnapped? Like, it could be something terrible, or it could be they are their own worst enemy. Your character, if you're in a drama or something like that, your character might have a goal like he needs to get his life together, and what's standing in the way is himself, right? So you can, especially in drama, you can have your characters kind of like their own personality traits kind of take up these mantles of this, or like roles in the story, sometimes even the role of protagonist and antagonist. Think, for instance, if our hero is an alcoholic who's trying to recover, we might say the antagonist is the addiction, right? So that's kind of like an interesting way to look at it and play it sometimes. You don't always have to have a traditional hero, villain, sidekick, whatever it is, web of relationships at the heart of your story, where there's the knight in shining armor and the knight in the black armor, and then there's the princess. You don't always have to do that. You can find whatever works for you and define these things in interesting and different ways. But still, the commonality between loglines and between strong, expressive, moving stories that people want to spend money on and buy and pay money to go see are that they are about someone that is doing something difficult and interesting, using a unique tactic that is, something that only they would do, or something that they do especially well, at least. And they're pursuing that goal in a way that is escalating in terms of action, meaning getting more difficult as the story goes on, culminating in the biggest challenge of all, and then they will either succeed or they fail, and then they will be happy or not happy, right? That's kind of the basics. So the logline doesn't have to take us all the way through to the ending, but we're trying to do a couple things with it. One, we're trying to simply persuade someone to read your script, because a strong logline is usually a barometer. Like, this is it's part of the reason that you spend so long on it, is because it's just most people will read a logline. They aren't necessarily going to read a script, but it only takes a few seconds to read a logline and to evaluate, is that something that sounds interesting to me? Does that sound like something I would spend money on? Does that sound like something that's worth my time? So the logline is a key tool for establishing confidence right off the bat and assuring the person that's reading you that they're in good hands and that they are in for a professional, quality of experience. It becomes very evident very, very, very quickly when you start reading a script if the person writing it is a professional or an amateur who has never done this before. You can just tell right away. You can even tell right away if they don't read a lot of scripts. There's just like a lot of little tells on the page. So you kind of have to know what you're doing, and you have to do a lot of work to establish and maintain that sense of confidence throughout every page. But like, don't break it at the start. It's like the handshake. The logline's the handshake, and you want to set that good first impression. You don't want to have the sweaty, weird, limp handshake. In terms of the writing purposes, a logline is useful too, because it kind of acts as that compass to keep you on board, keep you on track, and make sure that you're still writing the same movie at the end than you were writing at the start. So it's making sure that you don't deviate too far from your original intentions, the original appeal of this thing, and the original sort of subject matter or basic walls of the story as you outlined them to begin with. And it could be that you get to the end and you may now need to reevaluate, do I need to change the story to match the original logline because the logline ended up better than the story? Or if the story ended up better than the logline, you may have to change the logline to match that. But it is useful, in any case, to have that solid logline at the beginning, to act as your really strong, solid concrete foundation for which to build everything else on, because if your logline isn't working, it might mean your premise isn't working, which you don't want to find out halfway through writing. Hope that makes sense. So it'll give you a head start on outlining, because it will tell you where some of these sort of things are going to be, like where some of the key events in your story are going to be taking place right off the bat. And we can sort of assess that by looking at this default logline kind of template. You don't always have to stick to this. This isn't always what a logline looks like. But it is, again, a good place to start. If you don't know what else to do, if you don't know where to begin, if you're new at this, if you've never written a logline before, it is helpful to start with this. When or after inciting incident, an adjective protagonist must conflict before stakes. Inciting incident is sometimes called the catalyst, and that's the event that gets your story, or that is sort of like a call to action for your main character, as it's called call to action in Hero's Journey, right? This is the thing that demands some kind of response from them, and that response is sort of the answer to what is the movie about, right? Like the tactic that they use in response to that catalyst is forming the backbone of the central story. Thank you for posting that in the chat. I see Dakota has shared the logline command in our Discord chat at the moment, which has a little summary of some of the stuff that goes into a logline that you might use to just help you as you sort out the very basics of your own. So take a look at that on Discord. And if you're watching on a different site like Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, or Kick, then you should join us on Discord. You can find us at scriptcamp.net. Click that link in the top right and join our live and interactive classes on the Discord server. What else? I feel like I'm doing a pledge drive every time I do that. I'm like, and NPR can keep going for only $5 a day. Where were we? Okay, so log lines. That's what a basic log line is going to look like. We can figure out, well, so first of all, just to continue to basically define some of these essentials. Inciting incident is not the very first thing that happens in the story, usually. Like it takes a little bit of build-up. If you have you can have something interesting happen at the very, very start. That's more of your cold open, though, and the cold open then sort of will transition us into the Act 1 with that, and setting that base of normal. Like, we have to have a little bit of normal world for us to understand, because remember I mentioned movies are about people going on extraordinary journeys, not usually very mundane tasks and situations. It's about people addressing bigger challenges than normal. Then we have to establish what the normal is before we can understand what a deviation from it would look like. So that's why it's so important to not have your catalyst be the very first thing that happens, because we can't start by shaking up the world, because then we never understood what was shaken up. So even a couple minutes, even like the trend nowadays is shorter first acts, but even 5 to 8 minutes at the start of understanding who is your hero, what is the world they live in, what is their role, are they happy or are they not, and if not, what do they want, what do they desire, what have they been denied, some question like this that's going to tell us kind of what is the main, what is sometimes called the desire line for the main character, which is sort of saying this is the motivation behind his key objectives that is pushing him forward and moving him or her through the story. Okay, so inciting incident takes place usually nowadays between 10 and 15 pages in. Looks like we got a comment from YouTube from Javier Martinez saying thanks for this tutorial. Thanks for joining us, Javier. Glad to have you. We have lots of other YouTube videos on this same channel too, so you should check them all out. And we have new ones posted pretty much every week. And come join us on Discord, scriptcamp.net. Okay, so that's our inciting incident. It takes place about 10 to 15 minutes through the story. I would really, in terms of structure, it's pretty flexible in a lot of ways, but like, I would really not recommend having your inciting incident happen after the 20-minute mark. It seems like a mistake. It seems like something's off about the reading experience. If the catalyst doesn't even happen for 20 minutes, the reader will start assuming the catalyst already happened and they just missed it, or it was something less significant than what it really was, or something like that. So it can be a big problem if you wait too long for the catalyst. So make sure this is, generally put that on your plot board for around 10 to 15 pages in. What else do we have? Okay, an adjective protagonist, not just any adjective. We're picking an adjective that illustrates why this is the right character for this story, meaning that it's not just random. It's not just a guy, right? It's a character that feels like they have some need or some want or some question that is being answered in some way by the situation that they're being placed into. It's not like a guy must fight a shark in order to save his wife. We might pick, like, you know, an ex-marine biologist who was like, his arm was bitten off by a shark and he swore off of the job forever, right? Like someone like, what is that? That's just Captain Hook, isn't it? I just came up with a modern day Captain Hook. So someone like that has a clearer reason or like an investment in that journey or that kind of idea of the need that's being answered. Maybe the need in that case being to sort of move past this internal injury that is mirrored by that external injury, right? So he's not going to get his hand back like Captain Hook does, but he's going to maybe overcome his trauma and fear of the sea or of the shark or of maybe he'll rediscover his love of science or any number of things like that, right? It's not just a guy must fight a shark. That's why the adjective is so important and why you can't really overlook the adjective. And the noun that you choose to describe your character is also important because you can describe a person by a lot of different words, right? Think of, in the context of a story, what matters the most. It could be that your character is I'm writing a movie about welders right now, right? You might in your logline, you might say, a disgruntled welder or whatever it is, right? Or you can define them based on their role in a family. You might say, an overtaxed father. That could be the same person, the welder and the father, but you've chosen a different noun to refer to that character in order to relate them to the story in a different way. Do you see what I mean? So, like, the adjective and the noun are both really important choices to make at the start because it's kind of hinting to us what the character arc will ultimately end up being. And a strong logline includes that sort of built-in character arc that we can imagine how the character would grow, change, and be uniquely tested by the events of this story. Okay, hope that makes sense. And then last we have the conflict before stakes. Conflict is going to be that main sort of action that they're taking part in the second act of the story, meaning that it's usually going to include the antagonist if there is one, or the forces of that antagonist. So you have to sort of tell us, what is your hero up against? What obstacle are they attempting to overcome? And it should seem difficult. And like it would get more difficult over the course of the story, not less. If it seems like their journey would only get easier, then something's off. That ties into the idea of stakes, which are sort of what your hero stands to lose or gain, like gain or lose. They're kind of both tied into stakes. But basically, what would happen if they didn't act or if they messed up, if they failed or if they didn't act at all. And that is sort of telling us what is the gravity of the story, right? Is it just my best friend will be mad at me or is it the world will be destroyed? Something like that is important to understand so that we know how the movie will, again, sort of progress. Okay, so we're trying to give that overall impression of who's the main character, what are they struggling against, what will be fun and interesting about this, what's unique, original, and different than what we've seen before, and simply what will the main character be doing on screen? What are they struggling against, and how do we understand their progress towards accomplishing those goals? Okay, so I will take questions on loglines before we go any further. Does this make sense to everybody? Does anyone have... we're not going to share loglines just yet, but I will take just questions on these basic elements of them or anything that's unclear here. Feel free to raise a hand or to use the text chats. Here's a question from Javier on YouTube. What happens with the logline when you have more than one protagonist? So the thing is, even if you have sort of a wide cast of characters in your movie, you kind of have to write the logline pretending that the other ones don't really exist, and you have to center it around an A story. Like, think of who is the most important or most prominent of these characters, and use that as your sort of centerpiece for the logline. So think even in something like Pulp Fiction, you would probably center it around John Travolta's character, Vincent, right? So Vincent, over the course of one weekend, or a couple days, he tries to do a favor for his boss and ends up getting embroiled in crime shenanigans when he accidentally causes his boss's wife to overdose, basically, right? That's kind of like how that story gets going. Obviously, a logline for Pulp Fiction could look like a lot of different things, but in any case, as you write your logline today, 2024, the current year, you're going to want to emphasize that A story more than any other. So sort of pretend there are not other characters beyond protagonist, antagonist, and central relationship. If those three. You may not even need all three of those. Hope that helps, Javier. Other questions? We have a question from Michelle and from Becky. We'll start with Michelle. Hi, Michelle. You're on the stage, but I'm not hearing your mic. It looks like it is unmuted, but maybe just something's off with it may not be fully connected, or maybe some mic issue. I'll leave you on the stage and you can try again in a minute. Let's ask Becky's question, and then we'll try Michelle again. Hi, Becky.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go ahead.
Two things. Firstly, just to be different, I've decided in the story I'm doing, but I'm first going to write it as a play because it was all one location, one set piece, and then convert it to a screenplay. just because I think it might work better as a play. I'm still going to be using this class for it. Secondly, are you? It's in today's class. Are you going to be looking at people's log lines and helping? Because I've got a concept, not a log line.
Yeah, we will have some time for that today. We were going to do our pitches for the contained movies from last week first, though. So if there's time after that, then I'm glad to look at new loglines.
Okay, cool. Technically, it's the contained one
Okay.
from last week. It's just that I've transitioned it into a theatre play temporarily, just because there's more opportunities in the UK for theatre than there is for film at the moment for the kind of thing I'm doing, because it's drama. So.
Okay, sure. Well, yeah, in the second half of the class, I'll be glad to take a look.
Oh, all right. And are you okay with me still sticking in class even though I'm doing a play?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Cool. All right.
Thanks, Becky. We'll try Michelle again. Hi, Michelle. You're on the stage. I heard a little something. Try talking again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I do.
Okay, it's on push to talk. I don't know how to change that, but okay. So when I posted my log line here, I forgot to put an adjective to describe my my main characters. I put two different versions. It's a cannibalistic serial killer abducts the daughter of her lover, or a cop must stop his lover from killing his daughter. And I don't actually like either one of those, but maybe you can help me with this.
Sure, in the second half of class when we share the loglines, I'll be glad to give you feedback. To begin with, I would suggest, though, start with the inciting incident. So use this little template here and see if you can make it work that way, and then we'll do feedback later.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sure. Thanks for sharing. Okay, here's a question from Talking Palm Tree. Is the logline the thesis of the movie? No, not at all. So the logline is a marketing tool, and it is to help you stay on track in your writing. It is not necessarily the theme of the movie. It's not the message of the movie. It's not like the dramatic argument of the movie. It might kind of like imply or suggest those things, but that is not in our stated goals at all. Thank you for that question. Let me see. Any other questions? Okay, thanks, guys. Looks like that's it for the moment. We'll do a couple more slides, and we will talk about how to get logline to outline. And as mentioned in the second half of class, so this is a 2-hour class. So in half an hour, more or less, we will go into pitches from last week, and then we will look at loglines and open it up to just all questions about sort of feature writing. Okay, so don't post your stuff yet or else it'll get lost in the chat. And if you've already posted your logline, make sure that you have it copied and pasted, and you have half an hour to keep working on it if you're not like totally done yet. So just use the time, I would suggest. And also, just in any bootcamp class, I recommend have your logline or have your sketchbook open and be working on your movie idea throughout the entire class. Like, it's better than having, Tetris open in the next window. I would be writing down questions that you have, trying to answer some of these basic things, at least by the end of today if you can. You want to be filling out title, genre, logline, and comps, if you can. Okay, so let's look at some structure stuff and how we can go from logline to a strong basis for your outline. By just having all these elements answered, we can kind of figure out where those scenes would fall in the movie, and therefore we can connect the dots and reverse engineer and go back and forth from those plot points in order to fill out the rest of the story. Okay, so first things first, we are acting on this principle that it's about going to be like a page to a minute of screen time. So we do talk about those things sort of interchangeably. That's not really the case, and like it doesn't always even out that way that it's exactly a page to exactly a minute of screen time at all. That's not always the case, but like we basically do use that as a rule of thumb. So your movie is going to be 90 to 120 pages long. Features are 90 minutes to 2 hours for the most part. There are some that are longer and some that are shorter. But in any case, when we say like first 10 pages, we are referring to first 10 minutes. Okay, so an adjective protagonist. When or after inciting incident, an adjective protagonist must conflict before stakes. So we talked about the inciting incident, the catalyst, being the same interchangeable term already. A single moment that sets into motion the events of your story, forces your protagonist out of their stasis and shakes up their world. They have to take action. It's going to be a call to adventure. Things have changed. This is going to be, when stormtroopers blow up his parents, or his, adopted parents' farm, essentially, Luke Skywalker needs to join the rebellion, right? It's not going to be, the catalyst for Star Wars is not the opening scene with Leia recording the message on R2-D2. Remember, the catalyst is about 10 to 15 minutes into the movie. And in Star Wars, obviously, I think that one's probably more like 20 to 25 minutes. First acts used to be longer, and they have gotten shorter. They've trended shorter over time. So I wouldn't use movies from the 70s as like an exact structural model, but I will just draw examples from that here and there just because they make a good example, because a lot of people have seen it and are familiar with it. What else? Okay, so catalyst is something your character has to respond to. So make sure it's something that actually demands a response from the hero. That usually means that the catalyst is going to be something good for them or something bad for them. If it's something good for them, it's going to be an opportunity for them to achieve an objective, something they have lost, regain something they've lost, gain something they've been denied, or otherwise further their happiness and life goals in some way. And if it offers something bad for them, like it's a negative possibility, the story is usually going to be about them trying to get things back to normal or to defend what they have, right? That's going to be like the small town sheriff his town gets attacked by giant mosquitoes. The catalyst is something very bad. The first mosquito attack would probably be, or the chemical spill or whatever it is, however you want to frame it. Then your hero is going to spend the rest of the story trying to get back to how life was before, or to save what fragile scraps of of a life that they currently are trying to safeguard. So it's a call to adventure. Things have changed. We can't really go back yet. We can't really go back after this happens because it demands your hero to do something. So we know that the inciting incident nowadays usually falls between page 10 and page 15. So because you already have a strong logline, or when you get to the point of strong logline, you can put that down on your plot board right away. So let's write it down. I thought I had a drive already open. Let me just open a new document. Zoom in a little bit here. So we have it when inciting incident, an adjective protagonist must conflict or else / before stakes. Zoom in. All right, so let's list out the different pieces of the story that we can already start to put into place, right? So let's start by writing out the story beats. You don't have to do this now, but I'm just going to do this to demonstrate to you how you can go from strong logline to a sort of rudimentary outline right off the bat. So the story beats, as I kind of conceive of them and teach them, and this is like a modified version of Save the Cat and Hero's Journey and everything else that we've seen before. Nothing about this is unique, original, or patented necessarily. We have your intro, catalyst, what I call trying the locks. Sometimes it's called debate or refusal of call. We have break into 2, premise scenes, midpoint, escalation, all is lost, pit of despair, break into 3, finale, epilogue. Good lord. Okay. We have a couple things right off the bat. So you have your insight. Let's just write a sample logline so we can figure out what this would sort of look like as we start to drag these different pieces where they would go in the story. So I like the mosquito one. Let's go with that. When a chemical spill turns mosquitoes in a small Florida town into giant monstrosities. Let's go with hemophiliac sheriff must unite a fractured group of nursing home residents to turn the tables and save the town. Okay, so I just picked some dumb stuff, right? That's obviously like a stupid movie. Maybe it's kind of good. I don't know. But I mean, I've seen a couple giant mosquito movies. Somebody should actually maybe do this. I think they were all Sci-Fi Pictures original productions. In any case, we have a functional logline, right? We have an inciting incident. We have a unique setting. We have the hook, which is, in this case, giant mosquitoes. In terms of creature features, your creature is your hook. In horror, the hook is the threat. We have a sheriff that is connected in some way. Obviously, I don't really know what I mean by the connection between the hemophilia and the fact that he's now fighting mosquitoes. I just chose something that was like connected to blood in some way. He must unite a fractured group of nursing home residents. So that tells us this is a contained creature feature that takes place in a nursing home with a sheriff and a bunch of old people versus giant mosquitoes. Okay, maybe I would watch this. Maybe I convinced myself. Talking Palm Tree in our chat says, that movie hits, though. Thank you. Okay. It's a freebie if somebody wants it. Let's figure out where some of the key moments of the story would fall. So we already know, based on just the structural templates that we have, where all the page benchmarks for all these story beats are. Again, you don't really have to have this memorized or have this like ready to go off the top of your head already. But I'll just write it for reference. So nowadays, I'm going to be sort of scheduling out a 90-page movie for a horror, thriller, or action for the most part, especially a contained one. They actually usually are going to do even better at 80 to 90 pages, and I've seen some sell at like 78 and 79 when it comes to horror thriller. So we actually really are incentivized to go with shorter scripts, which is kind of cool. So we are going to figure out what the let's write out the page counts really quick. So we start with our intro, which is going to be, let's just say 1 to 10. Your catalyst I'm going to put on page 10 because this is a quick, horror, thriller, and action are fast-paced genres. We like a catalyst to come a little bit earlier. So for trying the locks, we're going to say 10 to 25, break into 2 on page 25. Premise scenes is going to take us from 25 to 45. Midpoint is nice because it's right there in the middle of the story, so a 90-page story, we immediately know we'll have the midpoint on page 45. Escalation is going to take us from 45 to 60. All is lost right there on page 60. Pit of Despair is going to take us from 60 to 70. Break into 3 right there on page 70. Finale is going to take us from 70 to 85. And then epilogue will take us from 85 to 90. If this wasn't a horror thriller in the 80s or 90s, it would pretty much be finale up until page 89, and then like 1 page of finale, or 1 page of epilogue, if that. They sort of just end after the climax is over. I recently saw The Beekeeper with Jason Statham, and I was kind of like, oh wait, this just ended right after the climax. There was no epilogue here, and kind of like a throwback to, that older style of action thriller type movies. Okay, so there's our page benchmarks, and we know basically now where a lot of the major events of the story are going to unfold. You don't have to stick exactly to this. It's not always going to work. You can move these around as needed, and when you write the movie, you're going to end up rewriting it anyway, and so like it's not going to feel as rote and locked into place as it might seem to begin with. In any case, let's figure out where some of these key events will be. So we have our inciting incident. The chemical spill turning the mosquitoes into monsters, right? That's our first thing. Okay, let's click, and we'll copy that. And we're going to paste that onto our plot board right away. There we go. We have our catalyst. Now let's do an adjective protagonist. A hemophiliac sheriff. It's still kind of dumb and flimsy. But in any case, let's mark where that would go. So that's going to be what we have to establish in the intro. Hemophiliac sheriff. I'm not sure exactly what that would affect about his personality. So obviously, you want to pick something better than that. Let's maybe say something like a cowardly small town sheriff. Oh, we already said a small Florida town. So a cowardly sheriff. There we go. He's a real chicken, and this is the first real crime he's ever run into, and now he needs to sort of step up and be brave and gain some courage to save these old people, right? Okay, so cowardly sheriff. We're going to put that under pages 1 to 10, and that's what we're going to establish about him in our first couple scenes. So we can already sort of leave spaces for a couple scenes that are going to hit this home and emphasize this as much as possible, make it seem like this is who he is in his kind of stasis, in his normal world, and until the catalyst happens, he's happy to continue like that. Conflicts. Must unite a fractured group of nursing home residents to turn the tables. We're going to put that under premise scenes. And then immediately you know that you can make room for a bunch of scenes under there, and they're all going to have this basic description of the action happening here. You can then usually pretty easily step back into your break into 2 and say, okay, this is the moment where our character now decides on this course of action or is kind of forced into this course of action, but otherwise needs to sort of feel like they are voluntarily moving through the story, not just like they're being dragged through it every step of the way. So it becomes easier to sort of figure out other plot beats once you already have this done. and save the town. Okay, save the town tells us what the stakes are, right? So because the all is lost moment is a moment where your character has either failed at their goal or seems that the failure is now inevitable, we can put that down here under all is lost. So save the town equals the all is lost moment is the town is destroyed or seems inevitable that the town will be destroyed. So that can mean different things in different stories, right? So in this case, we might imagine that if our hero is spending most of the movie squashing giant mosquitoes, maybe they find the hive of the queen mosquito, right? It would seem inevitable that the town would be destroyed if they found the biggest, scariest mosquito of all that they couldn't even kill. So that's what we can imagine the all is lost to be. Let's say the hero discovers the queen mosquito, and let's add insult to injury. It kidnaps his child. Let's say his dog. There we go. People love that. People love when the dog's in danger. Okay. So we have a couple plot beats already on the board. We have the type of person we need to establish in your first 10 minutes. We have the event that kicks off the story. And we have where the story needs to sort of go, so you can sort of see how much space you have now to expand on this situation presented from the catalyst into trying the locks. And you can then consider how your hero would either take active steps towards achieving that positive opportunity for them, or how they would take active steps towards preventing that negative thing from happening. So obviously it's going to start with investigation, figuring out what these giant mosquito things are, and then, because our hero is a coward, right, he's going to try to find other ways of dealing with the problem. The break into two is where our character sort of now realizes the situation they're in and makes a definitive choice that is going to set them down the journey of the story. So we're going to be, you can see already, we're going to have to be maneuvering him towards the nursing home in the trying the lock sequence, and we're going to have to be locked in the nursing home by the break into two. So let's say hero realizes he's stuck in the nursing home, and now all these old folks are their only hope of fending off the invasion. So notice something about the structure is that we alternate between sequences and single moments. So the intro is a sequence, a group of scenes that takes us from 1 to 10, whereas the catalyst is just a single moment, one single thing happening on page 10. Your catalyst should not be a sequence of things happening. We have to have just one catalyst, because only one event is going to be the most important thing that catalyzes the action, the journey, and the change of the story. Okay.
Sorry,
so,
Connor, can you zoom out a bit? We can't see the left side.
Oh, yeah, my bad. Sorry about that. Okay, so we have our intro and what we need to learn about the character. And of course, if we're doing a creature feature, we can add in a free thing at the beginning, which is cold open scare. Monster moment, like a hint of what the monster will be. That's sort of just built into the genre. We like to open with something sort of scary right off the bat. Okay, so we have our intro. We're going to be meeting the other characters and seeing the problem that our hero faces, which is that he's kind of cowardly. We have our catalyst. We have your trying the locks, or the basic idea of it. We are going to be get him to the nursing home. So that sort of is already telling us that in the intro we probably want to be meeting the residents of the nursing home as well. Might be a nice way to do it. You know, he's answering, you know, sometimes they'll get like calls from nursing home residents that he ends up having to come get somebody's cat out of a cupboard or whatever. You know, stuff like that would be a nice way to... This is like the movie Slither, I'm just realizing. I'm just writing Slither, aren't I? Okay, so we have intro, catalyst, trying the locks, break into two, premise scenes. We don't have the midpoint or the escalation, but we have the all is lost, and so that is going to help us fill out the earlier sequences because we know where we're going. We know that resistance that we need to add towards getting there and sort of barriers that we can layer in after the fact so that we know like what would get harder and harder about this. And obviously we just decided we're going to be trying to find the queen mosquito. So we don't need to know that there is a queen mosquito up until now, but we might imagine in terms of the escalation, although it seems like we're killing all the mosquitoes, we're getting deeper and deeper into their hive and we're starting to see, I don't know, eggs or something, right? We're ramping up that danger and increasing the threat of the antagonists as we go. I'm not going to fill these in, but hopefully you see how we can just like from having these really strong points already established, which was all derived from just a strong logline. And this was a dumb logline, but even a dumb logline that fits a template, that fits one of these templates well, or that feels like it answers the essential questions, I guess is what I would say, can act as a great early outlining tool and document for you, or like can help you build the document out. Discovers the queen mosquito, kidnaps the dog. That's right. Okay, so we have Save the Town, basically, is going to be our finale. Meaning that I assume the queen mosquito gets free of its cave that it's been living in. It starts rampaging through the town like a giant kaiju. We're going to need Godzilla for this one, I feel like. Or perhaps a big truck full of industrial pesticides that we force it to stick its proboscis into and make it drink all the pesticide or something like that. I don't know. A lot of ways to get rid of a giant mosquito. Giant bug zapper, perhaps. Okay, so we're at the end of this little sequence where I wanted to demonstrate how to kind of do that. We started with the logline, and you can even do these little highlights if that's helpful for you to sort of like visually establish where these different things would kind of go. And then, let's go back to our little demonstration of it here. Adjective, or inciting incident is the easiest one to just move to the board. You just copy and paste it right over. We have your adjective protagonist, and that's basically what we're learning about the hero, the limitations they face, the tactics they use, the quirks and personalities, the things that they want, or the things that they've been denied. Are they happy or are they not happy in your intro? We have your conflict, which is the primary action of the middle. It's taking up the premise scenes all the way up to the midpoint, so there's a solid like 25 minutes of the movie, so make sure that you feels like you have really solid premise scenes.
Sorry, Connor, can you zoom out again?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Where were we? Conflicts, yeah, and we have conflict before stakes. So stakes are usually going to be linked to this all is lost moment. So the moment where the character now has clearly failed or seems that failure now is absolutely inevitable, cannot be prevented, and it's all over. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 things to stick on your plot board right away from just the really strong concrete foundation of the logline. So I hope this is clear why we spend so much time on the logline and why a logline is important and why it matters and why it's not just like some after the fact thing. You can just write whatever movie you want and then just kind of figure out what the logline would be. It helps if you know what you're making before you make it. Okay, let's take questions about loglining and outlining before we go into pitching stuff. Anyone want to raise a hand or use our text chats? Feel free to do so now. Michelle, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I was writing this to you. My inciting incident is on the first page, but it's also the typical day in the life of the cop, you know, where it's his job to respond to, you know, found bodies and then, you know, work with CSI and other investigators to determine, okay, what's the cause of death, and for him to figure out who did this. So is that okay?
Okay, so the inciting incident is usually not on the first page. If you have something kicking off your story on the first page, we might define that as the cold open. Like, for instance, in the monster movie, it's the security guard that's going through the warehouse, and then he gets attacked by the monster. We don't see what the monster is, but it's like a little hint of what's going to come. So you can definitely have that kind of scene if you want. The first murder that we see from the serial killer, or something like that, where we might, you know, start to suspect who it might be, or along those lines, right? But usually we need to establish the normal world before we can shake up the normal world. And that's what the catalyst does. The catalyst shakes up your character's sense of normal.
Okay, well, then I was thinking that, you know, I was going to change who was murdered because so in the beginning it was this young girl who had been in a gang, and I wanted it to not be related to the serial killer, but then I decided, no, she's going to be related to, you know, she's going to be the first victim that's found, you know, that the serial killer kills, but and so I was going to have that being the inciting incident, as well as, you know, the normal world, but you don't know that it's the serial killer who has killed her.
Okay, that sounds fine. Yeah, you can totally do that.
Okay, and then I put romance in there, my log line, because the cop and the serial killer become sexually involved. It's not, I wouldn't say it's really romance. It's more just like, I'm horny and I want to sleep with you. You know, that.
That
You
might
know.
be, have you considered the title erotic thriller, or have you seen any of those?
Oh, yes. I mean, I didn't think of that, but I mean, I could change it to be a romance where that's part of the conflict is that, the cop is married and he's not being faithful to his wife. I wanted the cop to be a conflicted character, and but maybe he does fall in love with the serial killer, and you know, so maybe that could work, and that's part of the conflict is that he's in love with her, but he's got to chase her down and stop her.
Okay, yeah, totally up to you. To me, it sounds like an erotic thriller. Just I've done a few rewrites on them and have studied them a bit. They usually are going to
Okay.
center around a character with this sort of dangerous central romance, and the closer we get, the more danger we're in, but we can't stay away because they're just like obsessed with each other. That kind of thing. So that is kind of what it sounds like to me. I would consider using that label. Whereas romance more sounds like that you are trying to portray it almost like a positive thing between them. Or like they're going to end up together or something like that. I guess maybe I'm sort of conflating the traditional romance with what you might see as like romantic thriller, I guess. But I would consider calling it erotic thriller. That to me just makes the most sense off the bat. That might not have been your question, but I hope I answered your question.
It's okay. My question was just about that. Can my inciting incident also be the normal world for the cop, and maybe the serial killer? I mean, we don't. I would say in the second scene is when we meet the serial killer. She's a CSI agent, and we think she's just a normal person, and well, she is. She just likes to kill people. So, and she's got, well, she doesn't like, I mean, she has a mental illness that she's hiding, and so I wanted her to seem normal, but she's not,
Right.
and, and have the cop not realize that she's the killer until later on. And he realizes that, oh yeah, she's the killer I'm looking for.
Right. So to answer your question, no, the catalyst cannot be part of the sort of normal world. In fact, it's the opposite. It's something unusual. It's something that shakes up the normal worlds.
Well, then can you maybe in the chat give me some suggestions of what I could do then?
For what? To get
My-
your
for my
protagonist invested in the
catalyst?
story? Go ahead.
But for my catalyst, could you, like in the chat or something, give me some ideas of how I could then write my catalyst then? Because I wanted the first murder that the cop is investigating. I wanted it to open up with this young girl who has been found and she's dead, and she's been maybe she's been part of a gang murder. Maybe she hasn't. They're not sure, but it's the cop's job to investigate this. And then then there's other murders that he also that don't seem to be related that he has to investigate, and that and the first murder is after the first murder when he's trying to figure out who killed the young girl. That's when he goes to the CSI offices, and they're looking at the body and trying to figure out, okay, we know she was this old, we know she was killed this way, and et cetera, and that he's there taking the notes and maybe working with his buddy and figuring out, okay, so this is what we know. Now we have to go find her killer.
Okay.
And then the second murder is something else, and he has to do the same thing. And this is his job. He investigates murders every day.
Okay, so it sounds like your catalyst is probably your character sees a link between multiple deaths and starts to suspect that a serial killer is either involved, or if they already know about the killer, then he's like, I think these are victims of this killer, and now I have I have a line of investigation towards catching her. So this would be the moment where he's like, if we start the story, he's already on the case, they've already found the body in the opening scene, then your catalyst is probably that moment where they're doing the autopsy or they're looking at the photos and they're like, wait, every victim has a map of Indonesia branded on their left bicep. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
that's
something
where we
like
realize
that.
There's some connection, there's something more. So a scene like that is probably your catalyst.
Okay, so I like that, he begins to suspect, that he has figured out who the killer is, or he, or that, there's this this map of Indonesia branded on every bicep, something like that, something that connects every killer. So, all right. So I think I'm going to go with the second one, that there's something that connects all of these killers. And maybe the first kill though could be a MacGuffin, and it could red herring. I'm sorry, it could be a red herring, and it's not connected, so it kind of misleads the audience into maybe it's connected, maybe it's not, and this is my first one. I don't know what to do.
That's okay. So yeah, just you're doing fine. So yeah, keep trying your best. Use your logline as we discussed today to figure out those basic plot beats. And if it turns out you don't have a strong enough or if it feels like you don't have a strong enough logline to figure out the plot beats from it, you may need to just spend a little longer in figuring out what the logline is.
Yeah, okay. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you so much for sharing or for asking these questions.
Okay.
Other questions about loglines or outlining? I see a raised hand. Go ahead.
Hello, I was wondering how you'd lay out a logline where the stakes aren't, if they don't do it, things get worse. Instead, it's if they do it, things get better, if that makes sense.
Oh, okay. So this is a story kind of like your character. I'm just going to make something up. Your character lives in a gutter. He's like in poverty and homelessness, and an opportunity comes up for him to get out of that. And if he doesn't take it, then he'll just stay in his crappy situation. Is something like that?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you can totally do that too. That's like your sort of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory style story, right? Where we have a character that has a big opportunity come up. And in that case, you sort of need to emphasize why it is that they are going on that, or why that journey is tempting to them, or something like that, right? So when an impoverished boy finds the golden ticket, then we kind of understand that his motivation might be to get out of the crappy life situation. You don't always need to say, or else he has to go back to his life. Like, that is kind of implied in certain loglines. You don't always need to be super explicit about that. So if you are going for that sort of story, in your description of the character, make sure it's really clear why they want to change their situation.
Okay. So how would you end that section then?
For Charlie and the Chocolate Factory?
Yeah.
So let's figure it out. So it would be when he finds the golden ticket, let's call him a scrappy, enterprising young boy. I forget his exact personality. He's, if I remember, he's kind of quiet, actually. But let's call him Scrappy just for the purposes of our made-up logline. A scrappy orphan, he's not an orphan, a scrappy young lad must endure a series of bizarre and colorful challenges in a chocolate factory in order to achieve the golden ticket. In order to achieve, what do they think that they're doing? I'm trying to remember. They don't think that they're trying to win the factory, do they? That's like a later development. I may have backed myself into a corner by picking this as the example. My mistake. Let's go over to my document over here.
I think it's a lifetime supply of chocolate or something.
Was that what they were standing to win? Like, if they make it through the whole tour without leaving or getting horribly killed, then they get a lifetime supply of chocolate? Is that what they thought they were up for? Maybe that's it.
Well, I don't think they were going to knew that they were going to be picked off one by one.
Yeah, like Jigsaw.
I can answer that.
Oh, you can? Great.
I'm a big fan of it, yeah. So in the book, the thing is that they would receive a lifetime supply of chocolate. The actual thing they won was the factory, but they didn't know that. So everyone who applied would win a lifetime supply of chocolate, and you got to think the period in which it was written, chocolate wasn't exactly chocolate was more of a luxury. It's not like now where kids eat chocolate all the time. So it was a huge and of course the tour of the factory, which everyone had been talking about because no one had been allowed in there for years. So that was the other reason for entering, is that the five golden tickets got them into the factory as well.
So I would look at something like this. To win a lifetime supply of chocolate, a poor starving boy, see how we can kind of include that sense of that's why he's doing it, because he's hungry, right? And a lifetime supply of chocolate would be something that would get him out of his situation. Must navigate a series of bizarre challenges presented by a candy-making madman. I would probably include something about the factory. Like, this isn't a perfect logline, but I was just trying to figure out basically how I would write something like this. So, hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you. It's very helpful.
No problem. This is also the sort of like Squid Game model, isn't it? Shazadi, go ahead.
Yeah, so I spoke to you in the lab on Friday, and I wrote hopefully what is a better logline, but I wrote like 3 versions of it, based on based on which I think is the best. I don't mind, like, because one of them is the catalyst is slightly different, but it's pretty much the same story. It would just be structured a bit differently. Am I allowed to show you all 3 loglines by any chance?
Yes.
Okay, I'll put that.
You can, yeah. I hope they're just 1 sentence each at least, but I think
Yeah.
go ahead. So
Okay,
we're still, let's finish up with questions before we go into sharing loglines, though.
Okay.
Looks like, did you have a question about loglining or outlining?
No, yeah, I just wanted to show mine.
Okay, sounds
but,
good.
yeah,
Yes,
we can wait.
you can include a couple different ones if you want.
Thanks.
No problem. Thanks for that. Looks like we have a question from Total Idea of the Outline concept. So the whole idea of an outline. So the idea behind an outline is that you're making like a plan or like a roadmap for your story before you start, so that you're figuring out. Essentially, the ideal is that you figure out what happens on every page before you start writing. The idea is to try to organize your work, figure out those major plot beats and things that you're working up to, so that you're not kind of figuring it out as you go. You're trying to do that planning beforehand so that you know where the story's going. You therefore know how to build up to those moments and how to add in enough obstacles and tension and interesting stuff, in order to get to those moments. It's basically, an outline is a tool to help you stay on track and, first of all, just finish the story. It's much easier to finish if you have that logline and you give yourself the ability to track your progress through writing the story in a really clear, tangible way. And beyond that, it is, a way to work out all the problems, the potential kinks in the story, the things that don't make sense, the areas that you haven't fleshed out enough. It's going to help and support you all throughout the actual weeks of writing the script. So it's helpful to spend the extra time at the beginning on the outline and on other types of pre-writing like that, in order so that you're not flying blind. And when you're actually in the thick of it, you're not trying to do 2 things at once. You're not trying to figure out what happens and figure out how to execute it at the same time. You've already figured out what happens, and then you're sort of separating that process into execution on its own. So it'll make your life much easier. Also really useful if you want to work in professional TV and screenwriting. The outlining is the early steps of writing professional features and shows, in that you have to be able to pitch 1-sheets to your manager. You have to be able to come up with an early draft of an outline for your showrunner on a TV show. You have to be able to take other people's outlines and write a story based on that outline and give your outlines to other people so they can do the same. So it's really important all throughout professional writing to understand the different types of outlines and how to write them. Thank you for the question. Let's see. Any other questions before we continue? Javier says, got it. Thanks. No worries. Thanks, Javier. Shazadi has a question. Is it common to change a logline from the original if the movie's getting made? Because I understand that initially when you write a logline before producing the script, you're writing it as a guide for yourself and to get producers to read it. If the movie's getting made, you don't need to touch the logline any further. It's done its job. And at that stage, there's not like an official logline for the movie. This is all sort of like writing stage stuff. When the movie's gotten made, and like what you see on the IMDb sort of blurb and things like that, they're not written by the writer for the most part. I suspect that the writers of some movies are the ones doing the Wikipedia summaries, just given how some of them are written, but that's usually not the case. So the idea is, once the movie's gotten made, logline doesn't matter anymore, or your logline doesn't matter anymore. It's out of your hands.
Okay, yeah, 'cause I was curious because like sometimes I see on Letterboxd that the logline, or like maybe it's not a logline that they show in Letterboxd, but like the description, it sometimes doesn't seem to match like the typical logline template.
Yeah, it almost never will. The whole idea of loglines are something that we're never gonna see the original logline for 99% of movies unless the writer chooses to go out of their way to share it, and usually they just don't. So this is kind of like an internal document. I wouldn't think of this as like the public face of the movie in any way.
Oh, okay, all right.
Good question. Let me check the chat to make sure there were no other questions I missed. And then we will go into pitching time. I think that's it. Okay, that looks like all the questions for the moment. So let's move ahead. We are going to go into the pitching part. So if you were here last week and you worked on a contained movie idea, then now is the time. I'm going to take raised hands, and you can sort of... Do I have a slide on pitching itself? I think I do. Maybe not on here. Not in this one. That's okay. All right, so the way this is going to work is that I'll call on one at a time, and ideally you're working on the thing that you started last week. This is not something brand new that you've just brought for this class. I'm going to prioritize those that were here last week and that already got that early feedback on the first part of their on the first draft of their logline and stuff like this. So if you have already started and you know have the basics already down, then feel free to post your stuff in the chat now. Post your logline, or maybe it's a few sentences, more of a pitch, and you don't actually have a full perfect logline for it or something like that ready to go yet. That's all totally fine. Okay, so let's get started. We've got who knows how many to get into. There's what, 14, 15 people here in the audience, so who's to say? Let's check the raised hands. So you will also have to raise your hand and speak out loud and do this verbally. This is a very social job, and pitching is a very it's a type of public speaking, right? So you gotta kind of get used to this idea of speaking in front of others, trying to stay on track, stay organized, control your breath, not talk too fast, talk too slow, all these things like this. Okay, let's start with Luke.
All right. So I haven't gotten too far in the actual plot beats, but here's what I have. Title, nailed. Easy title. It's contained horror. I'm looking for a religious comp, but I can't find one yet. So far my comps are creep and misery. And because it's sort of a two principal character movie. My logline: when a grieving widower answers a religious ad promising to heal his soul, he is crucified by a sin-obsessed pastor and must find a way to appease his captor and break free.
Okay, yeah, we talked about the whole contained movie about somebody who's crucified. That's great. Okay, let's take a look at the basics. So nailed, yeah, I mean, pretty much. It's a freebie title. It does sort of feel a little comedic, but I mean, at the same time, who knows? Maybe the tone is kind of like that. We're not sure.
Well, I don't think so, but I think it's better than crucified.
Right.
Just it sounds more like a horror title, but that's my argument.
Okay. So when a grieving widower answers a religious ad promising to heal his soul, so he's sad that his wife died, and he sees an ad in the newspaper that says, "We'll heal your soul for you." He's crucified by a sin-obsessed pastor. So the pastor comes to his house and crucifies him there with the...
I'm imagining it more like he goes to the church
he goes there
and gets crucified.
Okay. And must find a way to appease his captor and break free. Okay, I would mention the church thing in the outline if you can, because that's the setting.
I did, but I cut it out because it went on too long. Yeah, I should shoehorn it in the beginning somehow.
Yeah, just because for contained horror thriller, the people who are reading these to make these movies need to know what the location is.
All right. Yeah, I had it like break free from a dilapidated church. I just felt it was too many syllables.
Appease his captor and escape his dilapidated church. I don't know. I think it works. Okay, so let's see. I think we have a lot of the basics. The sin-obsessed pastor. This almost makes me feel like the pastor is blaming him for his wife's death. Is that right?
Not really. I don't have a good adjective yet. Eccentric, oddball, I don't know, apocalyptic, maybe.
Oh, I think I see what you're saying. I kind of thought that what you were getting at was the connection between him and between the villain and the hero. which in this case would,
Yeah.
he's a widower. So you get this guy that is like, it was your fault that your wife died. Now you need to pray for absolution or something along those lines.
That probably would connect in a nice way.
Because
The way
otherwise,
I
what
was-
sin has he committed?
Oh, that's true. It's more just an adjective for the pastor. The way I was imagining it sort of connecting is a little bit different, but I think you're right. It does need to sort of connect big in a strong way in the log line.
Yeah, exactly. So you're close. I love the setup of the situation. I would just look for a little more of like anything beyond just, well, he's a crazy preacher, right?
Yeah.
If we can connect the hero and the villain, or say that like this that's why I was looking for that need that's being answered by the situation in that kind of dark way. Like maybe even he sees an ad that doesn't promise to heal his soul, but promises like salvation through confession or something like that, right? Maybe that's the idea. Maybe
it could be.
Go ahead.
Instead of heal his soul, I could just make it heal his grief. Like when an adjective widower, blah blah blah, promising to heal his grief, he is crucified by a whatever the opposite of grief is.
What is the opposite?
Something
of grief? I wonder.
Sort of like emotionless or like, I don't know, sadistic, but emotionless or something. How could you contrast?
I'm not sure yet, because grief doesn't really have a direct opposite. You know what I mean? Like, is the opposite of grief
like joy?
A joyful
I guess.
I'm not sure that.
But like joyful in like a sadistic way, like or just like self-satisfied. I don't know how to say that in like a horror tone.
Mm-hmm. That's okay. We don't have to solve all the problems right now, but you will find the answer if you just work at it a little bit. Looking good though. I like the essentials. Mention the location, so the church, because if he's trying to escape from a specific location, we need to know what the location is, and sort of the fun and games that would be promised by the logistics of that place.
All right.
And then connect the hero and villain, and you should be in good shape.
All right, perfect. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, let's keep going. I see a raised hand from Becky and Habibi. We'll start with Becky.
Hello. Okay, so I will repaste it. There you go. So the last forecast contained drama, thriller. Basically, like I said, I'm thinking theatre. There's more opportunities for that, but I'd then be able to adapt it to a film. So when word gets out of an impending nuclear attack on the UK, a dedicated London BBC radio station team must choose between reuniting with their families or continuing to broadcast vital information from an underground bunker, highlighting the power of duty, sacrifice, and human connection in the face of unprecedented conflict. And I'm aware that's not a log line because it's a concept, because there's no characters in there.
Right.
But that's the concept I've got. And I built from the other things we're talking. That's one I decided to go with. Because I had, if you remember, I had like 10 potential ideas. But that one I felt actually had... This is developed from a different idea I'd had. But, yeah.
Okay, so to begin with, I know it's not quite a logline, so it doesn't matter as much. But I would not really frame a story around characters that you need to must choose between something. Because that's kind of like the subtext of the story. It's not like we're watching them sit there and choose. That's an internal process. Choosing between two options or deciding between multiple things is somebody thinking about stuff. So I think we should frame it instead as they must continue to broadcast vital information, right? And because obviously that is what they do. Or if they choose not to do that, then
Okay, I suppose the other wording would be argue then. Because like some of them want to stay put because it's crucial for like the world to know or the country to know, because in the UK that's how it works. They defer to the BBC to keep broadcasting, and that's one of the commitments you have from being a BBC broadcaster. So then there would be some kind of debate with some of them saying no, we're staying, and some of them wanting to leave. But if they leave, then potentially it could cause harm to all of them, because if one of the nuclear things has like gone off, there could be nuclear stuff out there. So basically, it's kind of more like they're stuck there, and some of them are happy to do their duty, and some of them are not so happy.
Okay, so you probably want to frame this around, again, well, I know you don't have a protagonist chosen, maybe in mind yet, but it would probably be the person...
I do have
Go
one
ahead.
in mind.
You do, okay.
And an antagonist.
Okay, so I think framing it around them to begin with would start to make the story shape a little bit clearer. For instance, if you start to say, like, you know, the domineering head of this broadcasting company or this station or something like this, he must continue broadcasting or maybe must maintain order amongst his, you know, fracturing ranks or something like that as the world falls apart as he continues. I think first of all, you have to kind of make it clear why this is so important. Like, what information is so vital that people would die to or risk their lives to ensure that it's getting out there, and how many people do you actually need to do it? I would wonder those questions right off the bat. But beyond that, I guess I would say you're dealing with one character that's trying to keep this going, and you probably have an antagonist that's trying to either stop it or at least trying to, I'm not sure, are they stuck there, or is the team keeping them there or something like that? What's stopping the people who disagree from just leaving?
Well, they're not, once they've gone into the bunker, they're not allowed to because it's a secret bunker and it couldn't reveal to the enemy. Like, if people then leave, you know, once you got all the nukes going off, the protocol is that once you're in the bunker, you don't leave. Like, that's the protocol. But also there could be an argument, I suppose, thinking about it, you saying that, let's have a different argument. They all know that's the case. But then you got the debate about whether or not we give people who are also sheltering entertainment or not, because other people in the country are all sheltering. I imagine it being a nuclear missile that has been intercepted, so you've got the fallout, but it's not actually hit anywhere, which again is a very real scenario. So all these people are sheltering and they've got their radios, right? And so then the debate could be between BBC are supposed to not do, or any radio station, it doesn't have to be BBC, any radio station is still broadcasting. They get their information from a government specific personnel who passes it on to them, and then they all pass it on to their listeners. That's the way it works. If you had someone who's saying, no, we should carry on putting on music, we should be entertaining these people, they need it, and the other one being like, oh no, the protocol is that we don't. Like, that could be an interesting debate.
But that's just sort of like one moment or one scene. I don't think that really powers a whole play.
No,
or
that's why I thought it's better with this whole thing of him being stuck there and wondering, you know, that to me, the story is about, like you say, it's a moment, but like the story is about them being the ones telling everyone what's going on without actually knowing what's going on.
Oh, they don't even know what's going on?
Well, they only know what, like, they're being told by the government. So, and then of course you'd have secrets being revealed, like the fact that one of them knew it was going to happen ahead of time, so managed to actually get his family out, like, you know, the station owner knew it would happen for ahead of time through contacts with an MP, so managed to get his family out of the dangerous zone. And, you know, and the other people are like, well, why didn't you tell us? We could have warned people early. And you got that kind of drama, and you're stuck with these people and you start to find out, like, that this goes deeper than, I mean, it is a nuclear attack from another country.
Right. So here's what I perceive as a potential problem. The fact that you say that they're all stuck there together, it frames the entire movie around this conflict between people that half of them are like, we need to keep broadcasting, and half of them are just like, no. But they can't leave, so they're just their argument is, we just want to stay in this bunker and do nothing?
Well, with the making a decision, I imagine that being the inciting incident, that being like the pivotal moment that, or not the inciting incident is the news of the broadcast, but like that moment where those that decided to stay, or those that were forced to stay because they needed to stay, like, say, the technician, for example, as a potential, I don't know if he would be the antagonist, but, you know, they had no choice. They would, that's it, now they can't leave. So the choice sort of comes then, and then once it's the bunker sealed, that's it, they're in there. But now you got the anger of, you didn't let me leave, you know, that kind of
So there's kind of rivalry and resentment between the different factions here. It almost seems like you should frame this around the conflict between, like, that should be the centerpiece of this, not the debate of whether or not we should broadcast, but this is about the guy trying to maintain control of his bunker from an opposing faction that exists within it, or like a mutiny.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, that's how I would reframe this then. This is
Right.
everything else that you're talking about here is like, if this guy maintains control of his situation, then that's what will happen. But the whole story is not about people sitting around talking about, well, should we keep broadcasting? Yes. No.
No.
Okay, right. So obviously a play you have more room for debate and discussion. I understand that a play is much more dialogue based than a typical movie. But in any case, it sounds like what is in there, but that you're not sort of bringing to the surface is that this is about that kind of mutiny power struggle. And I think that's where the dramatic meat of the story sounds like it is. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely. And I mean, the reason I put drama/thriller is that, I imagine under heated circumstances, things can get quite violent or even dangerous, with people
Yeah.
getting cabin fever. So it's not like they're going to be in there for just 24 hours, it's days.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. They don't know. Yeah, it could be any amount of time. What's it called? Did
Yeah.
you see 10 Cloverfield Lane?
Yeah. So that kind of,
It's a good
you don't know. Yeah, it is. Because then you got the thing of, the food running out and
and the uncertainty as to what's actually going on outside.
yeah. And especially if one person seems to know more and isn't letting on.
Yep. That's always a great plot beat too.
Yeah.
So
I imagine that maybe there is an MP in there who was being interviewed before it happened.
What's an MP? A military police?
Oh, sorry, MP, Member of Parliament.
Oh,
like
member
your
of
Senate.
Okay, we think of that as
Yeah,
military
like
police.
your Senate.
Okay.
Yeah. So if he's in there, that could add drama.
Definitely. Yeah, maybe the hook could be who's actually there, or who's in charge, or who's trying to take power, something like that. But just
Yeah.
overall, I would reframe it in terms of the sort of mutiny angle, and it's almost like a Master and Commander, like a ship movie, right? Like one faction wants to take the ship this direction, the other faction wants to take the ship another direction. Maybe they're even like, not we shouldn't be broadcasting, but more like we should be calling for help or something like that. We should be using this equipment
Oh.
for something else.
Yeah. Or like if information comes out that they've got to keep quiet because it would cause mass panic, and the other side is like, no, everyone needs to know this. I don't know what that would be.
Yeah, I don't know
but-
what would panic. Oh, the nuclear strike has already happened. I don't know how we panic people beyond that. Like, how do we panic them more? God, could we? In addition to nukes, there's also zombies. That would panic them even more. Okay, so hope that helps with just the presentation of the idea. I think the idea is strong, and like it's there's a strong core there. I think it just comes to how you explain like what that external action is beyond just that discussion and the debate.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much. That's really helpful.
No problem. Thank you so much for sharing. Let's keep going. Who else has a hand raised? Habibi.
Hi, what's up?
Hi.
Hello.
Can you hear us okay?
Yeah, I hope my mic is okay because my laptop sometimes acts up.
No problem. Yeah,
But I
you
can
sound fine.
change to phone. Okay,
Seems good. What have you brought to pitch
all
today?
right. So I brought the logline for the red door, which is wait, I can like. Have you seen it? Wait, I can like answer it.
A
so
longer
you
one
can-
here. I think you said here's a shorter version. So maybe there is a shorter
Yeah.
one you posted below.
That's the shorter version.
That's it.
The
Okay.
longer version was like 3 times its length.
Okay. No problem.
Also, I'm sorry that it's like not in the perfect format, but I will definitely like do this. Yeah. So yeah, okay. The Red Door, psychological thriller horror. It's kind of like Fight Club, Taxi Driver, maybe some other stuff. I don't know. In a life marked by disdain and unhappiness, I discovers a mysterious red door in his apartment. Each step through it offers him revenge on the people who seemingly wronged him. Every step out, he is met with a new reality. If he steps inside, he can torture and kill the person he is hating the most at any given moment. That person afterwards suddenly respects and admires him in real life. A dark and twisted story about the inner self in conflict with the outer world.
That's a crazy premise you got there. I've never seen one exactly like that before. Kudos. I think I need to read through it again to understand all the pieces there, though, because there's a lot here. Obviously, this is like 6 different sentences, whereas the idea is that we want to try to combine this into one solid, coherent sentence. So
Okay.
let's see the basics. Okay, so in a life marked by, so he's disdainful and unhappy. He finds a red door that when he goes through it, he goes into like a sort of alternate dimension where a person that he's thinking about hating the most kind of is, and then he can kill that person, and when he goes back through the door into the normal world, the real life version of that person is now nicer to him. Is that right?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. And it's like it's about like sorry.
Maybe Death Note is a good comp. Do you think?
Yeah, it's also like kind of Death Note. True. And just like Death Note, sorry for the spoiler, but I don't think Ty goes out of this movie unscathed.
Okay. I haven't actually.
The idea
I've never
is,
watched it. I'm not an anime guy, so I've not seen Death Note, to be fair. But I know the basics of the. It's sort of this wish fulfillment. That's like, what if you could kill all the bad people that you don't like, right? Like, I think that's sort of the same.
Yes.
Basic idea here.
And it's like the first person is like when he tortures the first person, the viewer is still on the main character's side because he thinks, oh, this guy was super condescending to him, whatever. But after the first one, he goes on to a power trip where he just fixes all the broken relationships in his life by being a very, very bad person. The thing is that he never gets feels the consequences in the outer world. He feels the consequence by feeling super guilty, and just like it's a hollow version of reality. And the idea is that in the end he finds himself in the torture chamber, and his inner demons win over his ideal of being a good person, because what it's about mainly is the disparity between wanting to be a good person and wanting to seem like a good person and being admired and being loved as such. And that's the basic premise. And the door is like a symbol of fixing a broken relationship and going the easy way by fixing it with violence. Yeah.
I see. So to begin with, I mean, we don't have to get too much into story. I'm not sure if you've written the movie already or anything like that, but and so we don't have to get too much into story notes. But I would say I'm not so sure the audience would be rooting for your character if he goes through this door and, not knowing the rules of the world, his first actions are to torture and kill someone. Like, that's how he kind of figures out how it works, right? There's no instructions that he gets?
No, like there's like I showed you now the shorter version of the like I had like a full synopsis on. There's like a sign on the door that tantalizes him to go in, and then there's like a sign within the room that tells him he cannot go outside without doing it, and he doesn't want to do it in the first time until the coworker starts being condescending to him the same way that he is in the workspace, and then he feels like, oh, I can exact revenge now. So if you're like exacting revenge, then it's better than just like torturing a person. That's what is going on through his head.
Okay.
But then, like, most people that come after never wronged him in this way. He just wants to be like loved and admired and stuff, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And the horror comes from the protagonist, not from anything else, basically.
Right. So there's no antagonist, it seems like. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, the thing is, like, he ends up on the chair himself at the end, right?
At the end, right.
So his guilt-driven idea of being a good person is the protagonist, and the inner demons that tell him, oh, I deserve that, I deserve all this praise and love and whatever, is the antagonist. But it's all going on through inside of him, you know?
Okay, I think I see what you mean, but so let's ask the question, what obstacle is standing in his way? Just feeling bad? Just guilt?
Yeah, like guilt and never being able to enjoy the real world, and also like being disgusted by it because he knows as a human being he should feel the consequences, but the consequence is that everybody's just like nice to him. You know, like that feels bad. That feels hollow. That feels like he is not okay with this, which drives him even further down the line of like insanity and feeling isolated. And it just like it doesn't fix anything. He gets gradually worse throughout the movie. Yeah.
So I'm still not clear what is the problem and what's standing in the way. It sounds like you're saying this is kind of like, have you seen Nightcrawler or a movie like that where it's kind of like a villain protagonist story where they get worse and worse over the course of it? Is that kind of what you're doing here?
Yeah, exactly.
But
it's like
go ahead.
It should feel like a horror movie. It should feel like a horror movie, and like just like the idea of having a new scene with a new character, and you fear for the character to say something wrong because you know what the protagonist might do.
But we know he feels terrible about it, and also that it's not real, so the stakes are kind of all over the place. I'm not sure this idea is fully working. It doesn't feel like a horror story because the main character is not threatened, not scared, and not in danger in any way. There's not really an antagonist or a hook to kind of like... I mean, the idea of the door that you go through, you can then kill your enemies on the other side, and then you come back through, and they act nice to you. I mean, I kind of like the basics of that, but it feels like it's missing a piece. Like, I feel like we need something else to make this more... Right now it feels kind of like an abstract art film and not like a horror thriller. Does that make sense? Because
yes.
I think your main character needs a more substantial obstacle. Could that be someone else that has access to their own door, or somebody that's trying to expose him for what he's doing? Could that be there's more consequences to the torture and killing beyond just him feeling bad about it? You know what I mean? Like, maybe every time you do that, I don't know, it's making his body decompose, or it's making him go crazy, or it's making those people in 6 days after he does the murder, they turn into zombies, or I'm not sure. Like, it could be anything, right? But just the main character feeling bad is not really a great escalating set of stakes for the movie if he's the one that continues to choose to make himself feel worse and worse. And then you're saying it's not quite squaring how that movie would progress in a way that escalates, like moves the stakes up properly. The main character feels like he's sort of doing this all to himself, and then the obstacle is that he feels bad that he's doing something to himself. Do you see how that doesn't quite square as a horror thriller?
See?
Okay, so you can find a way to make it work. I think you just need to find one other piece here. I'm going to recommend, if you haven't seen Channel Zero Season 4, it does involve this cool, like, magic door that just shows up overnight in this couple's basement. And then they don't know they're trying to get through it, like, the whole first episode. They don't know what's on the other side, and, like, it's a really cool mystery that we build up around what it does. It turns out it's got this girl's imaginary friend in it that she locked away as a kid, and now when he comes back, he starts killing people, basically. That's kind of the essentials.
Oh, okay.
And that is, like, obviously it's nothing like your story, but, like, that is just an example of using the kind of, like, mysterious magic door to reach that horror thriller premise that has a clear set of escalating stakes and conflict. So you might need either... I would maybe think... Maybe this is, if we're doing like a sort of villain protagonist for your story like this guy that's getting worse and worse, maybe you need another character trying to stop him, or something like that.
Okay, yeah.
And that would be kind of like Riz Ahmed character in Nightcrawler, like his little happy-go-lucky assistant. He's the one we're really rooting for. We're not rooting for Jake Gyllenhaal's character, Louis Bloom. We're rooting for the guy that's suffering as a result and is trying to stop him and is like trying to just make it through and survive. It's very hard to have a whole movie where we're rooting against the hero if we don't have someone else to root for. So I would think about adding one more central character, a central relationship, an antagonist, or something like that, which can add that clearer set of stakes and help us understand a little bit better what the progression and the escalation of danger will be. Because if the danger is fully just in the character's head, or if the problem is only in their head, which is, I feel bad, then it's hard to imagine how that would escalate to the point where a horror thriller needs to. But if we're dealing with his child or something like that, that's like, Dad, you have to stop using the murder door, then we can easily see how he's like, no, I refuse to stop using the murder door, and we can really amp up that divide between the father and the son, or whatever it is. So that's my suggestion to you. Go ahead.
One idea that I just had, and then I'm going to leave you alone. It's like, what if like his inner demons feed off of him doing this, and then separating themselves and taking over his consciousness throughout the night, for example.
Okay.
And then he doesn't know. He forgets about it. He just forgets about it, and he doesn't like. But sometimes he just like has like short flashes of, oh wait, it used to be different. why is it like this now? And then it's just like it's an inner conflict, but it's like way more in the outer world. If there's like two versions of him,
Sure. So there's like an evil self that either comes out of the door, or he's able to talk to when he's in the door, or something like that.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's a good starting point. I would work with that. See what you can get from there.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. It's a very original concept, to be clear. I really like the basics. So just a little tweaking, just a little bit of amping up the stakes and the conflict and that level of urgency will really help you out.
Yeah, I will do so. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else? Talking palm tree. I've invited you to the stage. Hello.
Here I am. Okay. Hey.
Do you have a logline to share with us, or a pitch, or something in text that I can paste on the screen?
Yes, right here.
Okay. Oh, cards up, this one?
Yes,
All right.
sir.
Got it. Can you read out what you have to start us off?
So, log line or the whole thing? So the title's Cards Up, the genre's drama thriller. The long line is, after being offered to play cards in Las Vegas for the summer by senior nursing students, a young working class adult gets embroiled into a chaotic venture. The comp is 21. I like that movie.
All right. Thanks for that. So I've got a couple questions right off the bat. The first big question is, what is the chaotic venture that he gets embroiled in?
So it's the basic moral of greed, basically. When he gets his own cut of the money, he starts changing. He lets the money starts changing who he is. So throughout the movie, he starts becoming somebody you're not familiar with anymore.
Okay,
And
so he starts getting greedier and maybe doing criminal stuff, you're saying?
yeah, greedier. Yeah, he commits a crime as well, not him, but one of the students commits a crime, thinking murder. They're gonna try to hide that up, but
Oh, there's a murder.
yeah.
Okay, I would mention the murder in the logline, because that sounds pretty important for the story. So I would maybe even start with that, if that's kind of like the inciting incident, like when a member of his, I'm not even sure what this is, class group, something like that, when a nurse in his... Go ahead.
He was so he got offered to play cards in Las Vegas in a psych ward, and some nursing students came over to his table and started playing spades with him, and or some type of card game, and they was mesmerized by the fact that he is good at it. So they invited him to basically join his entourage to play Las Vegas in the summer, which that group did previously, but they want him to join. They like his talent, basically.
Oh, okay. So that's interesting. So the way they recruit him is that he's in a mental hospital to begin with, is what you're saying, and then...
Yep, vulnerable.
Okay, that's cool. I like that. I would mention that in the logline too. You've sort of just described him as a young working class adult, which doesn't really tell us much of anything. But if he is like I'm not sure, do they spring him out, or does he complete his treatment on his own, or like, I'm not sure how they get from A to B.
He completed his treatment, but one of them gave him a number to call them once he gets out, basically.
Okay, I see. So I would try to include some of the stuff, and also the murder, like, for sure, if that is at the center of the story. I think you maybe just haven't been very specific in the logline, or you've held a lot of information back. So I would give us more. Meaning not add a bunch of words, but I would start a new sentence that starts from the standpoint of, you can frame the inciting incident as a couple things. It depends how late in the story it is, right? You might start with when his best friend commits murder in Las Vegas, or you might start with when he's recruited from a mental hospital by a group of aspiring card shark, whatever it is. Then I'm not sure exactly how you'd get to the murder from there, but the what's the main character trying to accomplish would be a question we're trying to ask here. If you tell us he gets embroiled in something, that tells us the type of situation he's in, but it doesn't tell us what he's trying to do. Go ahead.
So he has been alone, I would say all his life, but most of his young adulthood, been alone and been dealing with depression and anxiety. So for them to offer him the chance to basically go to Las Vegas and basically like a fish out of water, he feels like he just hit the life jackpot. Like this is going to make him feel important, feel like that he is popular, that he got friends, that his life is going up, that he's moving up in the world, basically. Because he's working class. He don't really have friends. He's really not really tight with his family. So
I would ask the question: is he trying to like exonerate the murderer? Is he trying to prove that the murderer is guilty? Is he trying to just get away scot-free without any consequences?
The whole group is trying to hide it so they all don't go to prison.
Oh, okay. Is he on their side, or is he acting against them?
Oh, he's on the side.
He's on their side. Okay, so he's trying to help them get away with the murder?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, I would frame the logline around that. Because that sounds like, I mean, you can definitely include the idea that they recruit him to help them win at cards and things like that. But if the main action of the movie, the main meat of the second act is going to be, we're trying to hide the body, we're trying to clean up the bloodstains, we're trying to avoid the questions from the police, stuff like that, then I think we kind of need to see that in the logline, or at least suggest that the middle of the movie is going to be him helping them get away with this crime.
Yeah.
And therefore, we have a pretty clear set of, like, finish line and goalpost. We know you've gotten away with it if, the police stop asking questions, or maybe they get back home and the police don't find out, or something like that, right? So it's easy to see what the progression of that story would be. Go ahead.
And I also have the idea of them, because you see in the movies is where they start breaking down afterwards. All their sins comes to light after a while. Basically, is that murder basically open up a lot of their personal lives, those nursing students' lives, and they start basically break it down. You've seen that a lot of movies, so that's also part of it too.
Okay, cool. That sounds great. Like that, I think that works fine. I would just sort of re-center that in the logline here, and give us more specifics. Like telling us just a chaotic venture doesn't tell us much. You might want to tell us, when a member of his card shark group commits this murder, he must help them cover it up, to get away with it scot-free in order to, avoid getting arrested, something like that. So I would reimagine the logline somehow along those terms, and therefore we'll just have a clearer idea of what the movie is.
All right.
Cool. Any questions?
No, that was it. Thank you.
Great. Thanks for sharing.
You're welcome.
Okay. We have time for more. Any more hands raised? I saw some a minute ago. Shazadi, go ahead.
Are we ready to look at, is it still contained horror and thriller? Or, Carmen said I can go ahead of her. But yeah, so is it okay to... Oh yeah, Nacho said you're finished with it. Okay.
Yeah, I think we're through most of the horror thriller pitches, so whatever you got.
Okay. Yeah, I can repost it. I did put in my 3 log lines, but I'll put it again.
Yeah, if you could repost it or tag me, that'd be great.
Okay, I've tagged you in that. Can you see it?
No, I actually can't.
Okay, I'll do it again.
There it is. Okay, got it. Thank you. Okay, so why don't you, read out what you have or explain what it is that you want to ask about?
I just want to know which logline sounds the most coherent, and then I'll just go with that one. Hopefully, at least one of them is fine. Because this was after we spoke on Friday. Title is Rivers of Blood. The comps are The Namesake, Brick Lane, and Contagion. Genre is drama. The first one is after a crisis of contaminated blood causes an outbreak of HIV infections in his hospital. Prideful NHS doctor, pushed to his limits, must contain the infections while keeping his fractured family together amidst the turmoil. It's a little bit wordy, but yeah. Pushed to his limits after a severe outbreak of HIV infections. A prideful NHS doctor must contain the virus and keep his fractured family together. So that one's a bit shorter. And then the other one is after a postnatal blood transfusion leads his wife to test HIV positive, a prideful NHS doctor is pushed to his limits as he tries to save her life. Keep his fractured family together, and contain the outbreak of HIV infections.
You repeated a phrase or two. You definitely said HIV infection twice in the last one, didn't you? Maybe you could even just say to contain the outbreak.
Okay.
Okay.
It says she tests HIV positive, but it doesn't say there's an outbreak in the hospital.
Oh, that's true.
In that first bit.
Right. I got it. Okay. Well, you could say at the peak of the HIV crisis or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
A postnatal blood transfusion leads his wife to test HIV positive. You could just say infects his wife. Something like this. Okay. So I think the second one you were on the money. Pushed to his limits after a severe outbreak of HIV infections. Totally get it. A prideful NHS doctor must contain the virus and keep his fractured family together. The one thing it doesn't mention is the thing with the wife, I guess, which is important as well. But I wonder if it works without it. It might just be fine as it is. It doesn't exactly say why his... I guess you're suggesting that because he's pushed to the limits, that's why he has to keep the family together. So wait, actually, I think I do get it. Yeah, I think the second one works quite well.
Okay, all right, I'll keep that one then. Nacho said it feels like we're missing the fact that this one is of the first infections in the country/region. I mean, I'm not completely sure about that. I do know that that's when it's the 1980 was kind of when it was new. But my idea was more that this has been an ongoing thing for maybe a year or so in the hospital. So it's kind of normal, but the point is there's suddenly an outbreak in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Does that work?
Yeah, no, I get it. I'm with you. Although it does seem like are they still trying to figure out what the virus is?
So yeah, I guess in this one normal would be yeah, initially normal was going to be that there is HIV around, but it's not as prevalent in the hospital itself.
Okay.
Yeah, so I guess if that works, then
yeah,
yes.
I think this logline has almost everything. The one I do miss the wife thing a little bit, so I'm almost can you just add 2 or 3 words to somehow include the wife? But if you can't, it's okay. I think we get that.
Salvage his marriage.
Oh, okay. To salvage his marriage and keep his fractured family together. Maybe that's it. Yeah, try it out. But
okay.
At the end of the day, this works fine. I think I totally get the movie from this.
Okay. What about the one Nacho just put in into the chat?
Pushed to his limits after a severe HIV outbreak in 1980, a prideful NHS doctor must contain the virus and save his infected wife. That's pretty good. What do you think?
Okay.
Do you like it?
Yeah, that's fine. As long as that makes it clear though that as long as it can still be that HIV is still a thing in the beginning, and it's just that the hospital itself is having an outbreak.
Yeah, I think it helps just set the context for where the world is at, and the fact that we're not like, even though it may have been around for a couple years, we're still very new to understanding it and treating it, right?
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'll keep that one.
Cool. Yeah, I think Nacho's rewrite's very good. Any other
Okay.
questions?
Oh, I mean, also the family thing, I guess it doesn't need to be in there with his wife as being like his marriage being one of the stakes.
Well, the rewrite that Nacho just posted in the chat includes it all. I think that works quite well. If you don't think it's necessary, then I think it works without the wife. But this.
No. Yeah, I don't mind including the wife, but I mean, should I include the fractured family as well in this one?
In the one that is in the chat, or in one of these here?
The one that Nacho just suggested.
Oh, right. Must contain the virus and save his infected wife. That's a good question. I mean, in this, I get that saving his wife would lead to additional problems with his family, so I don't think you need it.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Looking good.
All right, thank you.
Sure. Thanks for sharing. Okay, we have a little time. We can probably do one more. I see a hand raised from Michelle, and I saw one from Carmen earlier. It's down now, I think. Go ahead, Michelle.
Hey, I just want to ask you to just look at my rewrite that I posted for the logline, if you don't mind. I just posted it in in the text.
Posted? It got lost in the chat.
I can read it for you if you want, because I found it.
Can you copy it and paste it in to the
sure
text box? Thank you.
Yeah, hold on just a second.
Okay.
Copy text. Okay.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Okay, why don't you read it out for us?
Okay, horror erotic thriller. A cop must solve a series of strange murders. No, I'm sorry, a cop who must solve a series of strange murders suspects that his lover is guilty.
Okay. So this is leaving out quite a lot of details. I like how succinct you've made it. Like, good job cutting out a lot of words and excess info, but it's not quite enough.
Okay.
We need a couple things. One, an inciting. So I would go back to the template and start with the inciting incident, right? So the thing that kicks the story off. Is it him getting into the relationship? Is it him realizing there is a killer? You might have to kind of make some choices there. We don't have to solve all the problems right now. Like, it's okay to not. I'm just going to tell you, like, the types of stuff that I would do, and then you can spend some time on your own thinking of how to pull it off exactly. But so we'll start with inciting incident. So in inciting incident, an adjective protagonist must conflict before stakes. So in your case, you might write something like, when he, well, let's figure it out. It depends where you want to start the story, right? Like, it could be almost anywhere. I think you're saying he meets the killer and starts the relationship in the movie, right? He's not already in the relationship before he starts it?
Yeah, he starts the relationship in the movie. So, the first thing that happens is that he's on the job, and he and his, cop buddy or, fellow cop that he's working with, are called to the scene of a young girl who's been killed. And so that's the normal work day for him, is this, is solving these things. And then he meets the murderer, the serial killer, in the next scene, but he doesn't know that that's the serial killer. She's a CSI agent, and so that's his normal. And he's married, and we just we only see the wife in, like, very limited scenes, like when he's at dinner with her and he runs into the CSI agent. He says, "Oh yes, this is the CSI agent I'm working with," because she says, "Oh hi, officer, blah blah blah," it's good to see you again. And the wife wants to know, who's this woman, and, et cetera. So he introduces her, and that's how we meet the wife like halfway through. So,
Okay, so I think that it sounds like your logline would probably look a little something like this. It might be when a married cop starts an affair with an unpredictable CSI agent. He comes to suspect that she's the serial killer he's hunting and must prove it before she kills his kid, or before she what? Like, think of what is the escalation that you could hint at, and that's kind of like the stakes.
Okay, so when a married cop begins an affair with a CSI agent, he suspects that she is the killer he is chasing.
Yeah, and must stop her or prove it or arrest her before blank stakes.
Okay, because what she does in the end is she kidnaps his daughter, and and I'm thinking that, okay, she's a smart woman. How does she not realize that this is going to end up in her being arrested? But she does it because she can. She has the power to. So she's really just demonstrating her power there.
Okay. So hope that answers your question, though, of I think I would try to reshape the logline a little bit about those terms, because you're trying to include the hook of the story. It's an erotic thriller, so we kind of need to know about the affair and that whole like illicit aspect of the relationship, and we need to know that he's dating the woman that he suspects is the killer. So we have to have all that in the logline. So reframing it along those lines, I think you'll make it a lot stronger.
Okay, I'm going to say it again. A married cop, a married cop who is involved with a CSI agent.
Well, you probably want to say that he starts an affair with her over the course of doesn't that happen in the movie? So when he starts an affair with an adjective CSI agent, so you'll want to give the description for what is she actually like. You don't have to solve it right now, but just think about it on your own, and later you can fill it in when you have a clear idea of how you want to portray that villain. And then you'll say he suspects she's the killer he's been chasing and must stop her before she kills again. Something like that.
Okay. God, this is just so hard to do.
Well, we just knocked it out in like 5 minutes of work. It's not too hard.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess I think of the concept in my head, and then I feel like, the log line just comes out completely different than what I'm thinking of in my head.
Yeah, no, I get it. I totally understand it. And this is like, it's a muscle like anything else, right? It's like lifting weights, it's like riding the bike, it's any of these things that over time you'll just start to be able to do it more like second nature. It'll just come much more naturally in the corrector format. But no matter who you are, everybody has to adjust the log lines and try a few out, and like they don't always come out perfectly formed right away, so it's totally normal.
Oh, well, okay. So at the end of this, I put that that he must arrest. She is the killer. He must arrest before she kills his daughter. Is that okay?
Sure. Yeah. Must arrest her, stop her, prove her guilt, whatever it is.
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for sharing.
Okay.
I think we had one more question from Becky, which I have time to take, but we don't have any more time for more log lines at the moment. I recommend, if you want to do more with the feature, then sign up for Script Camp, because we've got plenty more classes in this Feature Bootcamp series. At scriptcamp.net, you sign up for unlimited membership for just $29 a month, and save 40% if you subscribe yearly, and includes video library, which has recordings of all the previous classes. We'll take our last question, and then we'll wrap up for today. Go ahead, Becky.
Yeah, it's not really related to films. It's because you're from California. So working on my book, and as you know, my character's Californian, and I started talking about the house, and then there was two issues. So first of all, what do you call the floor that is above the bottom floor, the ground floor?
The second floor.
Yeah, that's a problem. Because in England it's the first floor, that's going to be a problem.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, that's a little unusual for us. We normally, although in an elevator, sometimes it will be marked G and not 1, though. So, but it goes G then 2. It's not G then 1 then 2.
Right.
Yeah.
We have ground floor, first floor, and the problem is she's American, so she'd say second floor, but that'd be confusing for my British readers, so I might have talked to my editor about that.
Okay.
The second thing, find a way just to not mention it. The second thing is, you know, when you get up the stairs into the second floor, whatever, that bit that's like you get up onto that floor that then leads to all the houses. Would you call that a landing?
It leads to other houses?
Sorry, other doors, other bedrooms,
other doors.
sorry.
Oh, yeah. So, like the platform at the top of the stairs, or sort of like in the middle of a staircase where there's a sort of plateau that then leads to another staircase that goes up more? Yeah, that's a landing.
No, the actual top when you've done the whole flight of stairs.
Oh, I think also a landing, but I'm not 100% sure.
Okay. And then, obviously you have a basement or cellar. I'm assuming you call them both.
Yeah, completely interchangeable, though cellar does have the implication, I believe, that it is accessible from an exterior door. I don't know if that's always true, and maybe that was only historically the definition of it. Nowadays, people will kind of say either one. A cellar is sort of like more separate from the house or accessible from like the barn-style doors that you pull up like that, whereas a basement is more like you go down steps in the house into the cellar, or into the basement. But then again, people conflate them all the time, so it's not a really strong line between them nowadays.
That's cool. We call it a basement, so that works. And then the last one is the loft, the attic. If it's been transformed into a bedroom, would you call it an attic bedroom?
Oh, we could. I've never heard that term, but it makes sense to me. We would say loft sometimes, but loft can also, more often loft will refer to if you have like, gosh, I'm not even good enough with architecture to explain what it would normally be, but like when you have, for instance, an area that's a raised up area in your house that might be like sort of on top of another room almost, and it's like sort of, I don't know if I'm even explaining it well, but like you sometimes have a bed up there, or you sometimes have like a hangout zone.
Basically, it's the room.
Go ahead.
It's the room that is the. It's not normally a room because it's where the loft. Where the ceiling kind of comes down at the diagonal angles. So the roof comes down at diagonal angles. So it's a room that in some bits you have to duck because you have the ceiling is like a triangle shaped.
Right.
So.
But attic bedroom makes sense to me. Loft bedroom, I get it either way.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Sure. I like that. Oh, at the end, it's like trivia. We have a little trivia segment.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for that, Becky. So we are wrapping up. Thank you so much for everybody who pitched and shared their ideas and stuff like this. I know it's not always easy to share an idea for feedback and to hear your idea doesn't work. You need to change this and this. So thank you all for doing that. We have plenty more stuff coming up on ScriptCamp, WordCamp, and our many other different servers. So I'll just leave you with a list of some upcoming events. Every Friday from 6 to 8, Saturday 12 to 2, and Sunday from 11 to 1, that's this current slot. That's going to be our normal boot camp sessions, so novels, TV, and features. We run 90 days for the novel class, 8 weeks for the feature class, and 6 weeks for the TV. And at the end of each of those, you will have a brand new, finished, rough draft. It's not going to be like, ready to sell for $1 million. This is hard work. We're not trying to guarantee any results. This is all just like going to the gym, right? This is practicing and repetition and building muscle memory. So these boot camps are a great way to do that. We also do have lots of free and sort of one-off classes like this one that you're in right now. So if you want to just stick around for those, that's totally fine. And we have plenty of other events that happen during the week, like script swaps, readings, and workshop groups and genre meetups. So there's plenty of fun stuff to do around the server, even if you're not taking the classes. But again, thank you all for coming, and we will wrap up here for today. We hope to see you soon for the next one. We have lab on... Oh, sorry, today's Sunday, actually. We don't have lab today. Yay. We have table read at 2 p.m. today. Thanks a lot, guys. Hope you got some good feedback on your ideas or this pointed you in the right direction, and we'll see you soon.